Here we go. Thank you for attending 29, I think, episode of this, whatever it is. I'm your host, Greg Gaub. We've got our regulars on, John Kitt, Russ Paver, RK, Leo, we got Ray, and I'm sure we'll have more coming in. Brian is coming in, and people will keep joining us. So I was, again, provided some fun talking points. I think Brian is the one who sent that to me. And we'll start picking from that list shortly, I'm sure. Does anybody have anything that they want to show and tell or talk about or ask about or a topic that just occurred to them? Or go ahead, John.
I was going to say, I ended up getting, I'm trying these little mini cams.
Oh, wow, that is small.
Yeah, and it's really quite neat. So the problem is, I guess, the way that they, the focal length. So just trying some, they seem to work really well, maybe about 4 inches back. So I've been trying to build some sort of mount for them for the car, but it's really not bad. It's, it's supposedly, HD, but for some reason they're in 4:3 format. But I think they're a whopping $4 each or something, and they just need a mini SD card, and they have a power life of about 50 minutes, and they're really cool. So I don't know if you guys ever, it's on a, I don't want to promote a particular website, but it's on wish.com.
Oh,
so yeah.
And you actually got the thing that you thought you were ordering?
I did, and it was really funny too, because I would go to the mailbox every day, just like The Simpsons. I'd go, hey, where's my spy camera? Where's my spy camera? Where's my spy camera? And they finally came. So I try them though. It's really pretty cool.
Does it have Wi-Fi?
Oh, sorry, Ray, what was that?
What is the angle of view? Do you know what the angle of view is?
Oh, you mean as far as how far out it goes?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
That's a good question. It's probably a good maybe 110, 120 degrees. It's not quite
wide. Quite wide.
Yeah, quite wide. Yes.
That's relatively wide.
Yeah.
Does it have Wi-Fi so you can monitor on a portable device?
These don't. I didn't want to spend the extra $3.
Mistake. But I got one, and then I got this one which does have Wi-Fi. And yes, you can monitor it from a phone or tablet or whatever, and it's excellent. It works very well. The angle of view is quite wide, so you get all sort of background clutter in as well as the track. If you have it mounted on a car, then you get the track, but also the side clutter as well. So that's a bit of a problem. If your track's not neat and tidy. But yes, they work pretty well. These ones actually have a magnet on the back, so you can stick it on metal things at the back.
See, John, you could have had that, you cheap ass.
Okay, I did mention I'm Canadian, right? You know the difference between a canoe and a Canuck?
Tell me.
Okay, the difference between a canoe and a Canuck: canoe's tip.
What?
The difference between a canoe and a Canuck: canoe's tip.
Excellent. Hey, John and Leo, are those infrared LEDs I'm seeing around the camera lens?
Yes.
Yeah, they're
not
spy
fantastically
cameras.
effective.
They're billed as spy cameras or security cameras. You can stick them anywhere.
Yeah.
Like nanny cams or something.
So yes, quite good value for the money. Yeah. I got mine from eBay, not Wish.
Yeah, I was gonna say you can probably find exactly the same thing on eBay for cheap. Or these days Amazon, lots of Chinese retailers sell straight through Amazon.
Yes.
Why will my video not start? Oh, there we go.
Sounds like those things would be perfect to actually stick in different spots around the track as well.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, they're so small. I've even played with the idea of taking one of the old Monogram MRC cameras and actually making it into a real camera.
Yeah.
That would be great for the Wi-Fi version. You could set an old phone up as what the Wi-Fi is showing and make it like a jumbotron on your track, and have
Yep.
it watching the camera that's pointing at the corner or something, and so you're always seeing the cars swoosh by on the little
Yes.
jumbotron.
They're not real time though. There's a delay, so
Oh,
you
yeah.
know,
Yeah.
it's
You wouldn't want to
like-
use it
not
to
like
drive the car.
yeah, because it's digital. There's a delay. Analog cameras like security cameras are generally analog, and they are real time. But not at £5 or $5 or whatever a time.
Well, I mean, I have
Um,
a GoPro Hero 3 or something. It's not super recent, but it's their thing was basically to do Wi-Fi control and see the thing on your phone or whatever. And there's a pretty heavy delay there. I would never use it to try to do anything through the camera. I pretty much only use the Wi-Fi to the phone so that I can make sure the camera is aimed properly and isn't upside down or sideways or whatever. And then I hit the recording and turn off the phone because it's useless otherwise. That's like waving my hand, and then I would wait, and then I would see my hand wave on the screen, several seconds later. But they're definitely fun to have for a slot car track.
I have one of these
Oh, there you go.
mobile screen cameras. So yeah, exactly that idea. You put a phone in at the top, and the phone will display whatever you want it to. You can display, slideshow, or obviously a video or pre-recorded video or whatever, as well as coming from the camera. But
Exactly.
yes,
That's
Awesome.
very cool.
Nice.
Anybody else have anything they want to show off or talk about?
This is a Polaroid Cube that I got. I've never gotten around to using it, but I want to try that for some video on my track.
It's probably a lot smaller than it is in your, like, if you managed to open it up, you could probably take the guts and put it in a car.
Probably could.
yeah,
Yeah.
I think the Polaroid one was what I wanted, but they're like £50 or something. These ones are $5. So
It's all
went
about
that
how
one.
good the quality is. Just because it's got a name on it doesn't
Yeah.
mean it's going to
Yeah.
be better. That Polaroid might take video that's not significantly better than your $10 eBay
Yeah.
Chinese.
True.
And
thing.
even if the video isn't that great, I mean, you can make it look like it's a home movie from back in the day or something.
Yeah, throw some effects on there.
Yeah, that's what I did with the last little thing I did. And it's great fun.
Yeah, a lot of those Polaroids and whatnots are literally the same electronics as the cheap no-name.
Yeah. Yes.
I've tried some of the keychain ones too and had fun with those.
Yeah, I've had a couple of those different
Yeah.
resolutions.
The best one I found was what they call a wing camera, which is intended for radio control aircraft on a flying on a wing something, and it's got quite a narrow field of view, so it covers the track, but not too much of the external clutter. But yes, that works quite well as well.
Wow. Now, did you get those on eBay as well, Leo?
Yeah, somebody mentioned it on the forum, called it a wing camera, and I thought, what's that? But I did find them on eBay, and it comes. I'll go and get it in a second, but it comes just as sort of wrapped in heat shrink, this little circuit board with a lens on the end and a battery. So it's not like a finished camera like these things are. It's just a sort of module that you can bolt into the wing of a plane, presumably.
Oh,
Yeah,
I guess,
don't
yeah,
wanna waste
because someone
weight
would
on
actually
that.
build it into the wing, right? Yeah,
I
right.
think that's the idea. Yes.
Yeah,
So I've got it
doesn't
on the
have to be
roof
built
rack.
into the wing, as long as you're not adding too much weight to the wing.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah,
I'll go get it.
cool. Yeah, I've gotten some pretty good quality in-car footage from my GoPro, but as discussions online have been recently, it's not watchable if you're doing slot car speeds. So you basically are doing video specifically for producing an in-car view from your slot car. So you're just driving at like a 1/10 of the actual slot car speed, just kind of cruising around. And getting car interaction video is hard because you got to convince the other guys on the track to go slow around your car. Because if they're driving around at regular slot car speeds and you're going slow enough that the footage is watchable, they're just going and it's like, okay, this person has a broken car that they're driving. You know, but if you get everybody to just kind of stay a little bit in front of your car, or if you're doing, you know, rear shots, stay a little bit behind your car while you all just kind of trundle slowly around the track, it looks super cool.
Yeah, very cool. Very cool.
We did one here on my track some years back, and I can't find it right now. It's on the computer somewhere, but I can't get at it. And we used 3 of those, or 2 anyway, of those monogram, Revell monogram NASCARs, the classic NASCARs, one on each side of the car that I was using with the camera on it. And man, it was so much fun because we got the guys to drive nice and slow. We did 3 of and ended up right at the end of the video with this massive pileup coming down the bridge and the hill, and everything jammed up into the outside barrier. And that's where we finished the video. I must find it somewhere. It's on a thumb drive or something
Oh yeah,
somewhere.
if you find
But
that,
it worked out really well.
those are definitely fun to watch. Is when the camera car crashes. All
The
right,
guy
show
who
off,
brought
Leo.
the camera, it was something that he got from Hot Wheels. It was a Hot
Oh,
Wheels
yeah.
thing,
Yes.
and it worked well.
So Leo, that looks really, oh, that's interesting.
So the roof rack is hinged, so I can angle the camera appropriately, but generally about there is about right. So this is actually a Tamiya 4-wheel drive, battery powered car. So it's not guide, but there are no brushes. It'll just trundle along on its own fairly slowly, but round the track sort of thing with the slot in the guide in the slot. So yes, that works quite well.
That's a great idea to use the Tamiya RC. That's a really good idea.
It's quite tall, so I had to raise one section of the track where there's a bridge. I had to raise it to accommodate this, but yeah, the field of view is not as wide as the little cube cameras, so
Yeah.
that's quite good, I think.
Very cool. Oh, what do you got there, Jim?
Here's the Hot Wheels camera.
Oh,
Oh,
Have not used it in a while.
right, looks like a Batmobile.
Doesn't it
Yeah.
come out of there so it can ride on the track? There's like a holder that you can.
Since I used it, I think you have to put this whole thing on there.
Yeah, we found a way just to strap it onto a chassis, as I recall.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's in the holder, and then it pops out of that so the car can actually run on the track. And the holder is like something that you can use it as an action cam, but it's able to just roll around on the track by itself. At least that's what I thought when I first saw that product.
That's what I recall. It's been so long since I used it.
Yeah, the quality of those devices has gotten a lot better over the last several years.
it's amazing how you can no longer trust a teddy bear anymore.
As it should be. You should not be doing anything that you should be worrying about a teddy bear recording you doing. Simple as that. All right, so let me turn that off a little bit. I got people with video. No worries. Anybody else got anything they want to talk about, ask about, show off?
Does anybody else subscribe to Vintage Motorsport Magazine?
I used to, but I haven't for a while.
Wonderful publication. And in this issue, there's an article about the LA Slot Car Museum. And also in the new products thing in the back, they usually show a slot car. And CG is going to make a Birdcage Maserati, Jim Hall version, and Carroll Shelby version.
Ooh.
That's cool.
Matt McDonough at CG Slot Cars, he does some really nice stuff. And he's a car guy, so that helps a lot, you know, apart from the fact that he's a genius when it comes to 3D printing and CAD stuff and so on.
I have his Chaparral, the 2J, and the Shadow, and the Autocoast car.
Okay. And then he has a BRM as well.
I've got that too. I did manage to get the Hot Wheels camera out of the package, out of the container.
Okay. Yeah, there you go.
It does have wheels on it.
That's right. Yeah.
So did anybody do anything with slot cars on Halloween?
Do you want to show
Oh,
off your
did you?
slot car thing, Graham?
Well, if I can grab my video, share content, I guess.
I turned
Oh,
on
who is
share- I turned on shareability, so you should be able to do it now.
Photos. Select photos.
The easiest
Here's
way
one
to
here.
do it is to make sure the thing you want to share is open in what other window it's going to be open in. And then on Zoom, click share screen and then choose the window that you put that in.
Oh. Okay, that ain't working. Darn it. Selected photos. Selected photos.
This is worth waiting for. He sent this video to me on Halloween Day, and it's probably exactly what you would think of if you were to think of slot cars on Halloween, but it's fun to see.
An orange and black slot cars, no doubt.
Mhm.
Orange and
Hey,
black
nice.
slot cars.
One of the clubs down in Portland often, this is probably the only year they haven't done it, though they might have, but they usually do a Halloween race where everybody makes Halloween themed slot cars with no rules, no restrictions other than they gotta-
I couldn't get that to work this time.
Well, let me see. Did you put it on your Facebook page?
Yes, I did. Yep, had to think there.
Grand.
Thank you, Mission Control.
Yeah. Actually, it might be easier for me to just look at my messages. Here we go. And make that bigger. And pause it. Okay, so this should work. Can you guys see that?
Coming. There it is. That was how I delivered candies to the kids.
Oh, I remember seeing that on Facebook. Yeah, it's so much fun. Oh, it's so cool.
It was 30 feet long straight.
That's cool.
Yeah, so that was my wife driving it in that picture. There's a couple others, but are in that video. But yeah, the kids I had a couple of pumpkins out by the sidewalk that, just lit up, and then they just stand between the pumpkins and then I send the car down to them. I had both lanes going, but it still took some time, but nobody wanted to, I apologize. I can only do like 2 at a time. And everybody was just happy to, no, we're just going to stand here.
Yeah, I've already got my treats. I'm just watching.
Yeah. So, they just dragged a little styrofoam tray just behind the cars, eh? And everybody liked that. And I had fun in the afternoon laying out, dragging all the track out of the boxes and, so it was a lot of fun. And then once the kids left, my wife came out about, probably 45 minutes, an hour later. She goes, "Are there still kids coming?" I said, "Nope, haven't seen any for a while."
I'm just
I
playing.
was just sitting there running cars, eh? And you don't get a 30-foot straightaway too often and a couple of curves. And I had a ton of cars that were worth taking outside, that could, take a tumble in the driveway. So every time, if one come off way down the end there, I just sat in the chair. I just stuck another one on the track. Eh?
So you had
I'll get
good
it later.
weather too.
Pardon me?
You had good weather.
Oh yes, it was. It was dry and I had a coat on. It was cold, but just sat in the chair and I was running cars there by myself for like an hour. But all the neighbor guys came around. As soon as the kids went to other houses and all my neighbor buddies, they all came around to take a peek. Eh? I was hoping someone would come back at like 9 o'clock and we could get some good racing on because I had headlights. Most of the cars have headlights and stuff. So. So it was a fine night. Kids had a good time. They'll remember that.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah. All right. Anybody else before I dig out the topics that I was?
Greg, is Russell on today? I thought I
Russell's
saw
on, yeah.
Russell earlier.
Right in the middle.
Yeah, he's there.
Hey, Russell,
Yes.
got stuff to show you, my friend.
All right, let's spotlight.
Okay.
Oh, hang on. I don't need to share a screen. I just need to hold it up.
Ooh.
That's
Oh.
that's the first chassis of those two cars that you sent me.
Nice.
I stripped it down, took all the mechanicals off it. I bead blasted all the paint off it, and then I've repainted that one.
That's
So
beautiful.
that's ready. The motor right now is in pieces because it didn't run. Believe it or not, and I don't know if you're ever going to see this, but right here on the end
Yeah.
is a tiny little commutator, and there are two tiny little strips of material that run against that commutator in the motor to make it
Wow.
turn. And unfortunately, the copper segments on the commutator have worn away completely, and the commutator is like a triangular, almost like a Mazda rotary, that rotary thing that you have in the middle of the Mazda rotary engines. That's
Yep.
what that commutator looks like right now. So I'm waiting for Alan Schwartz in Baltimore to open up his box, see whether he's got any parts for us. The rest of the motor is actually pretty good. And what I'll probably do is get some little neo magnets to fit top and bottom of the originals, and they'll just slide in there and you won't even see them. So if I can get the armatures going, I think we got a chance of getting the cars to run. There's the little gimbal that comes out of the front, all
Wow.
nicely cleaned and polished.
Yep. That's beautiful, man.
And then that's the connector that the gimbal runs up against. And then the wheels. What I've done with the wheels is I took out all that silver paint that was in there, and I gave them a coating of black, which brings out all the nice lettering on the edges. I don't know if you're going to be able to see it.
Wow.
But there's lettering all the way around. It says Mini Models Limited, and then it says something 20-6 or something down the bottom. And then I'm just picking out the spokes with some chrome paint.
Yep.
And of course, there's one wheel on those things at the rear that's plastic,
Right.
right? And it has a different detail on the inside. And this one was broken out. I don't know if you remember. There was a whole piece broken out of that central hub. So actually, I machined a little aluminum spacer that fits right in there, and I put it in there, and I cast in some epoxy and let it set, and then pulled the little aluminum rim out, and then machined and re-drilled the wheel.
That is awesome.
Wow.
So that's what's happening at this end of the world.
What size?
Those chassis have a big ass lead weight in the front of them. Look at this thing. It's solid lead. It's about half an inch diameter and about 3/8 of an inch tall. It's a massive piece of lead. Fits right up in the front of the chassis. So obviously they must have found that with the motor being behind the rear wheel, they needed a lot of weight at the front to keep those to keep that silly little gimbal in contact with the rails. But yeah, that's how it's getting on. It's coming on. It's looking pretty good. That's the first one. I haven't started the second one yet. I didn't want to make the same mistakes twice, so I thought I'll do one, and then I will have learned from that for the second one.
What size
So that's the update.
What size commutators do you need, Dennis?
Say again?
If you can give me some of the specs on the com size-wise, I've got a big box of old Scale Electrics comms downstairs, so I'll have a look for you.
It's about 1/8 of an inch in diameter and about 1/8 of an inch long. It's absolutely tiny. It's the tiniest comm I've ever seen on any one of these motors.
Is it smaller than on the Formula Junior motors?
I don't remember what this Formula Junior motors looked like.
They're the little skinny things with the plastic U-shaped rear axle carrier.
I don't know if you.
I'll have a look.
I don't know if you can see that.
Yes, quite
Yeah,
well.
we
yes.
can, yeah, it looks good. Looks
It's
good.
got a plastic ring around it that holds the three segments onto the center, but it's so tiny.
But so I could find a comm that was a few thou longer then and get rid of that plastic ring, right?
Yeah, if I take the plastic ring off, I could start to pull the plastic ring off, and then
Okay.
there's a bit of commutator underneath it. But like I say, that the whole thing is only about 1/8 of an inch diameter.
Okay, I'll have a look.
And Alan said he would have a look for me. I think he's got a couple of spare motors, let alone anything else. Plus, I need a driver and I need some bits and pieces from him. But
Okay.
yeah, it's just I just thought I'd let Russell know that I haven't forgotten about him.
That chassis is beautiful.
And one more question, what is the motor shaft on that, an 07 or 8 or an 093?
No, 78, I think. Let me just grab a pair of calipers.
Wow.
That chassis looked fantastic.
Isn't it?
I thought it was a brand new chassis that he like found old.
Yeah,
new
actually,
software.
the shaft is 062.
Okay,
So the shaft is a 16th. The commutator is about just over 1/8 of an inch, about 128. On the areas that are not worn, and the total height of the segment is about 0.135 of an inch. So that's what, about 4 millimeters.
Yeah.
3, yeah. Yeah, it's
I will
about
have a
4.
look.
All right. Well, as I say, if Alan Schwartz is going to have a look for me, and we'll see.
Okay,
It's quite interesting because for those who know about winding, this one's got what they call a star wind, where there's only one connection on each commutator tab, and then the 3 coils are joined together at the bottom in like a little pigtail at the bottom of the other end of the windings. It was something that we used to do years back. All right.
I know
you
nothing.
got a lot of guys. You got a lot of guys with Homer Simpson eyes just spinning around in their heads.
Yeah.
I know, but you know what I mean.
I'm not even gonna ask if there's an advantage to that because I have no clue what you're talking about.
What it does, if you really wanted to look closer, is from the commutator, the wires go from one of the tabs. The wires are wound around each pole, and then normally that connects to the next one, and then that one, and that connects to the next one as you go around. What this one has done is each pole is wound individually, and then they're all connected at the bottom end. You can see that little piece of solder there, where the 3 wires are joined together at the other end. So they're connected to the commutator at the top, and then they're connected to each other at the bottom.
So it's like 3 piles of wire that are then
Correct.
individually soldered.
Correct. Yeah,
Okay,
but
gotcha.
instead of soldering back up to the top, they solder there. We used to do it, and there's not a major advantage. I seem to remember the motors drew a little less current that way.
I imagine it's also a little easier to manufacture, maybe?
Maybe, yeah, maybe it was in those days.
Presumably the gimbal will not run on a Carrera type track where there are plastic insulators between the rails.
You're
and the
absolutely
slots.
right. I very much
So-
doubt it will,
Yeah,
because basically that little ridge in the middle of the gimbal runs in the slot, and then the rounded section of the gimbal is what contacts the rail. So unless it falls deep enough in that the edges of that gimbal are going to actually run on top of the rail, which it might,
Okay,
I
is
don't know.
23 less than 46?
Yeah.
All right, let's go.
Okay. So Mr. Smith is giving us mathematics today.
Not anymore, you.
Okay. All right. So anyway, that's mine for today.
Awesome. Very interesting.
Thank you.
I was reminded that we have some people who have not been on enough or in the past enough to have given us their slot history introductions, because we just kind of stopped doing that because most of us are regulars now. So I wanted to give the opportunity to anybody out there who wanted to do that. I believe Mr. The Unicorn indicated that he would be willing to do that. Lightning the Unicorn, would you like to give us your intro?
Yeah, I could do that. Well, pretty much just like, well, everybody in that, start off with slot car stuff as a kid, and that I cannot remember what set it was, anything like that when I first got mine. It was just like one of those sort of cheap ones that you used to get from like Kmart or places like that, standard sort of figure eight type thing. But one set that I do remember I had years ago was the Aurora AFX. And the one that came from that one was one of the Bathurst tracks from there. I can't remember what that was actually called. But Peter Brock's car was one of them that came with it, and I can't remember what the other car was. Over time, that pretty much like went, bits and pieces got missing or broken or whatever, as normally do and that. And then I pretty much like started getting onto the video game side of things. So basically Gran Turismo, Forza Motorsport, all that sort of stuff and that. So pretty much slot car stuff basically pretty much took a bit of a backseat from that point. So pretty much around about like late 90s sort of thing, it started taking a bit of a backseat. And then I lost my sight in 2008 through various different bits and pieces. So I was sort of starting to think, what am I going to do to satisfy my racing side? Because I've always been a huge fan of cars, love motorsport, all that sort of stuff. And it's like, well, what can I do now? And so kind of like had a bit of a thought. Like I remember having slot car stuff when I was a kid. And I was just wondering whether that sort of stuff was still around in like 2009 and that. So I went down to local hobby shop, and sure enough, Scalextric and Carrera and all that was still very much a thing and very popular in that when I was talking to the guys down there. And I decided on getting a set from there, a Scalextric one. I think it was called Mountain Mayhem. It had Craig Lowndes BF Falcon, and I think Mark Scave's Commodore was in that set. 132 scale. And so I got that home, set it up, and well, yeah, I've pretty much been on and off doing that sort of thing and that for the last several years and that. My track's kind of packed away a little bit at the moment because I haven't really got that much space to actually sort of set it up. Though I do currently have sitting on the floor at the moment a small little oval track in my costume room, which is just like, I've just pretty much set it up recently because just recently went on and ordered quite a few cars because just felt like looking on the website recently a couple of weeks ago and spotted that Scalextric released the Back to the Future time machine, and sort of like, I've got to get that because that was one of my favorite cars. It's like, yeah. And that kind of like kicked my interest off recently about getting back into it. I was looking into getting into digital a few years ago with the 6-car power base that was out back then. But one of the main things that I found with that one, because I couldn't see what was on the screen, and because there wasn't anything out for that one that could actually like talk back to you or anything like that, there wasn't any way for me to be able to know where I was, and trying to remember where all the settings were and everything like that was just a nightmare. So that pretty much like got set to the point where all I just needed to do was just hit the start race button. It was all just set up for one thing, and every time I plugged it in, it was just basically just run that, and that was effectively it. Then recently, while I was on the website getting those cars, I came across that they'd released the Arc Pro power base for the digital layouts and that, and noticed that it was controlled by an app. So decided to download the app, have a little squiz at that, see if it was accessible to the voiceover feature on the phones at all. And sure enough, for what I could work out, it seems to be pretty well completely accessible. Well, to the point that I could find out without it actually being paired to the base. So it's sort of like I could actually get to set up these races how I've always wanted to, and that with it being pretty well accessible to the voiceover. So I've just actually recently, yesterday morning, actually, I decided to order myself one of these power bases. So that should probably be arriving next week because it's coming from a different state. So I'll be able to hook all that up and see how I go there.
Awesome. And just so you know, the Scalextric app is okay. It kind of it does the job, but it's not that great. So if you haven't already checked it out, look for the Magic Arc app and download that to see if your screen reading stuff can work with that, because it's a much more complete and full featured and functional race management system for the Arc Pro.
Yeah, I'll have a little look at that, see if it actually works.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much for joining us in the last couple
Whereabouts in Australia are you?
I'm in WA, about 40 minutes south of Perth.
Okay.
Fremantle or?
No, not that far.
Sort of. That's more sort of like west-ish. I'm sort of more down Rockingham way. Between Rockingham and Mandurah.
It's been a Christmas there many years ago.
I have a buddy who lives in that part of the world. Hillary's, I think it is.
Oh yeah, yep, that's north. Yep.
Also a slot car racer. He came out of what was then Rhodesia, which is now Zimbabwe, years and years back. He's been out there for a long time. There's quite a few slot car races up there, but they're not quite home races. It's much more club and higher speed stuff.
Yeah, I'm sort of a bit of the opposite myself. I'm not really a club racer myself. I just do home stuff. One thing is not being able to see your cars running around the track. It's a little bit different to be in a club situation, I think.
Sure.
So I just tend to play around at home.
It's great to hear that you can do something.
I don't remember what club it was, but I saw a video about a club, or read an article about a club who had a guy with vision issues, and he basically, one of the club members would kind of be in his ear saying, turn 1, turn 2, or whatever, giving him where his car's at so he could, not always be at the back of the pack.
We have a guy who races with us at Buena Park Raceway at the commercial track, and I don't know how bad his affliction is, but I mean he uses a white stick, so he is, I guess, legally handicapped, and he's just basically learned over the years by whatever little bit he can see and sounds where his car is and gets the rhythm of the track. But anytime he comes off, everybody has to yell, "Alex, here's your car right here," and then he knows where it is, and then he can get back into his rhythm. It's great that guys do it. I think it's wonderful.
Well, and don't forget, according to Chris, the world record for speed with wing cars was set by somebody who wasn't even looking at the track.
Yeah, I heard about that. Yeah, I'll probably end up starting to learn my track once I actually get it set up properly, because I'm actually looking at, once we got our project car out of the shed, I'll be setting up my track in there, getting it more, converting it, get it insulated a bit sort of thing, so I can set up the track in there. And with a bit of luck, I might actually be able to get Bathurst set up in there.
Well, we look forward to you sharing that.
We were talking about that. Was it last week when we were talking about which tracks we wanted to build?
Yeah, that was me that brought up Bathurst in that one.
It was you that said, okay. Yeah.
Yeah, that's one of my all-time favorite tracks. Bathurst.
Yeah, good choice.
Well, again, thank you for joining and sharing with us. And I think there's probably a couple other people who haven't done introductions. Mr. Jim Kane, I'm not sure if you've done one before. Would you like to do us an introduction?
I have not. This is my first time. I'm in Central Illinois. Some of you may have heard the expression, will it play in Peoria? That goes back to the vaudeville days. And if a show would play in Peoria, it would work anywhere. So Peoria became a test market for new products in the 60s and 70s. They would try it here first. Interestingly, one product that flopped here was Pampers disposable diapers. But anyway, I go back to Christmas 1963, a Strombecker set. Went through a couple more years, Monogram, Revell, Cox, K&B, Atlas, all of that. Then teenage years, motorcycle, cars, kind of lost interest. Got older, I'll never say I grew up. The 90s got back into slot cars when saw SCX had a Chaparral 2E and a Ford GT. Put together a track with Strombecker track sections a number of years ago. Struggled with that and the connectivity issues. And a couple of years ago, finally replaced it with Carrera track, and I'm much happier with it. Works much better. Have a variable voltage power supply, which is a huge help. And have a bunch of vintage cars, some restored and unrestored. Have been trying to find replacements for some of the cars that I didn't take very good care of in my youth that got trashed. And I'll get a new body for that someday, and then never did. And I mentioned Vintage Motorsport. They probably should get a commission from some of the slot car shops, or slot car shops to give them a commission, because I'll see a car in Vintage Motorsport and say, wow, wouldn't it be cool to own that, and find a slot car version of it. So I'm able to own and drive the cars I never would be able to afford or even approach affording with all the slot cars. And recently I've discovered a real new joy of it. 6-year-old grandson loves to race against me. I won't say who wins, but we have a lot of fun.
Wonderful. Yeah, I part of me looks forward to grandkids. Part of me is willing to wait. Kids aren't that old yet. But yeah.
If you're ever looking for parts to replace old ones, make sure you let us, because a lot of us, I know I have a bunch of stuff. Chris probably has twice got. There are a couple of guys here that will be able to help out here and there.
Thank you. One thing that's been great is the replacement tires. Paul Gage and some of the others. When I first got back into it, the tires are old and they're hard, and you can't get replacement tires. And now I've been able to get replacement tires for a lot of the vintage cars.
If you, there's a few vintage tire manufacturers making urethanes that, quite a few of them actually, that use the original vintage molds. So you can pick up where Paul Gage won't, in a lot of cases, won't have the sidewall detail.
Mm-hmm.
I know that RS Slot Racing does all the Cox tires, so you can get the Firestones, the Gears, all with great sidewall detail on them.
Yeah, those are all molded by Michael Ortmann in Germany.
Yeah.
Okay, I recognize that name.
Mm-hmm. And his tires are really good, performance-wise, as well as the fact that they have all the detail, as Chris was saying.
Well, cool. Thank you very much for sharing. And we still got a couple others who haven't shared before. Brian, did you want to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your slot history?
It's Gipper. You guys, I was on last week. Same name, so you guys know who I am.
Yep. But tell us more about yourself.
Like I said, I think I got back into this when I got back from Europe in about 2008. I was Air Force, active duty for 15 years, and then worked as a contractor for them, teaching meteorology to new Air Force meteorologists. Got out of the military, stayed here. I'm actually in Illinois as well. I'm just the other side of the river from St. Louis in a town called Belleville. I'm running about a 65, 70 foot Scalextrics mag racer here. I've got several timing different systems. I was curious about the ARC system as well, but I went with an ARC Air just to try out the apps. Like you said, the Scalextrics app is okay. It's not too bad. What I don't like is the track systems, setups. You have to pick something pre-existing. Pain in the butt to add a car. So I've used the Magic ARC app. One thing I wanted to mention, and I guess it may not matter to him, is Magic ARC app will also run in portrait mode. So it is a larger screen and easier to see, but if his sight is that bad, it may not be a factor for him. Right now I work for the United States Department of Agriculture. I do a lot of database maintenance for them. Toying around with some 3D printing, doing some chassis and just goofing around a little bit. And I noticed recently you picked up a resin printer not too recently there, Greg. Did I see that right?
Yeah, I got one from a friend, so I know it works. I just haven't personally gotten successful prints from it.
Yeah, there you go. I've been doing okay with my Ender 3 Pro, but still just kind of toying around with it. Mostly chassis at this point. I got a bunch of broken up bodies here that I could probably build some chassis for. One thing I did want to point out, I don't know if you guys were following it or not, but Electric Dreams right now is running a special of the week every week from now until Christmas. Last week they had a Fly C5 Corvette white kit for 25 bucks. This week's special is a slotted Alpha 33.3 from the Targo Floria 71 for 35 bucks.
That's worth it for parts.
Yeah, I've got 2 of those Alphas, and they're some of my favorite cars to run. They're quiet, they're smooth, right out of the box.
Yeah, and that short wheelbase makes them good for all the tight little turns that we home track racers usually have.
Well, and even on a mag track, you can get them to slide pretty well, pretty nice. They are fun to drive. They're not so stuck that they're, it's just pin it and go.
Yep.
Aside from that, don't know. I grew up in Michigan. That's about it.
All right. Well, thank you very much for sharing and for joining us. Hope you can be one of our regulars. Looking down the list, I think, Scottrick, have you given us a full introduction?
I think I did.
I don't remember. Refresh us.
I got into 30-second slot racing in the mid-90s when Alan Smith was doing events over at West Seattle Speedway. And then at Fantasy World shortly after that, and kind of got into it that way. Started doing my own resin conversion kits for the Scalextric Trans Am cars when they came out, and was marketing those under my Noisy Muse name for a while, and then moved out here to the wilds of eastern Montana. Well, I guess technically we're only central Montana. We're 6 hours from each border at 80 miles an hour. Anymore, I didn't do any slotting for the last 15 years really, and now Jim Hansen has gotten me back into it a bit, and we're building some brass cars. I've collected all the bits now for putting together 4 chassis, etc., and we're going to work our way through the 50s.
I thought I saw that you had already built the first one. It looked pretty good to me.
The chassis is assembled. It's a pretty basic one, Dennis, but I guess we'll start easy and work our way towards hard. It's been at least 20 years since I soldered a chassis, and it looks every year of it.
Well, again, thanks for joining us again, and hopefully you can be one of our regulars as well. I think that's pretty much everybody who hasn't for sure given us a history. So is there any other questions, comments? Go ahead, Russ.
Greg, I know you've got, I believe what's called the Arc Tower, but it's for running a ghost car.
So are you talking about the old analog thing?
Yeah, it's where you're gonna hook it on the track, put your car on there, and it will adjust itself to your track.
Yeah.
What was that?
I've got a Scalextric Challenger, which is a Mercedes DTM car that has a boatload of electronics in old school electronics that basically it has a sensor on the guide that senses how much the guide is turning, and it has sensors on the wheels to determine how fast they're spinning, and it drives around your layout 2 times to record the radius of all the turns and the order of the turns and the distance between turns. And then when you push the button on the little tower to tell it to race, then it goes at a good race pace, speeds up for the straights and slows down for the turns and everything. It's pretty good. Not good enough for somebody who's been racing for a long time, but definitely a challenge for anybody who's only, if fairly new to the system. There are other recordable lap systems other than that one. That one you have to have the tower and the car. You can't do it with any other car. It's just that car. There's another system called Scalextric Pacer, which is a special power-based unit, basically, special power track. And I don't have one to know exactly how it works, so it might work on one lane only or either lane or whatever, but it records it in the power track, your throttle controls. So you can drive any car around your track up to a certain length, because they all have a limited amount of memory in their tiny little brains. But with that system, you can put any car on the track and drive it around, and it records your throttle. The car is not recording your layout, it's recording your throttle. So then you can play that back, and so that you can use any car. And then there's the Arc Air and Arc Pro and the 6-car digital power base from several years ago. They all have different ways of using a computer or a device to play back a lap or something like that.
Okay. Would you have to have one for each lane if you wanted to run multiple cars?
Not if you use one of the digital power bases that basically can record up to, can record any length of a lap for any 6 or all 6 of your digital cars, but it would require it to be 6 cars on a 2-lane digital track, or I believe it can be used for one or either of a lane on a 2-lane analog track. But this is the old 6-car power base from several years ago. I don't think the Arc Pro or Arc Air system has a way of doing a recorded lap. They can do a fixed speed pace car, but that's just as good as putting a rubber band around a controller.
Yeah.
The only other thing that I know of off the top of my head, and there might be other things that I just don't know of, obviously, but Slotted came out with special firmware for their oxygen chip that will record a lap. For that, you would need the oxygen chip in a car. You could put that car onto an analog track. It doesn't matter, as long as it has power. You would basically just give that lane full power. And then you would need the Slotted oxygen controller, so an SCP controller with the oxygen cartridge or an SCP-3 controller. And then you would basically, put the car in learning mode, send it on its way and do a couple laps. And then when you tell it to play back, basically you end learning mode. And from that point on, every time you put it on a powered rail, it starts playing back that lap. You could do that with any car, and you could do that. You could use one controller to record multiple cars, with multiple chips, right? So if you had 5 cars, you have 4-lane track, you want 3 of the lanes to be, recorded lap pace cars or whatever. Get 3 chips, put them in those 3 cars, 1 controller, and one at a time program those 3 cars, learn the lap for those 3 cars. And then when you start the race and those lanes get power, those cars will just play back their recording.
Okay.
So,
I know the one I borrowed from you at one time, it was a silver tower.
yeah, that's the Challenger.
Okay. That was pretty cool, actually.
They are pretty cool. They're hard to find. They were made a couple of decades ago. I don't know when they were actually made, but it's been several years since they were made. So you'd only find that on eBay if somebody was selling it, or wherever somebody sells their whole Challenger thing. So yeah, if you want one of those, your best bet is to put a saved search in your eBay account so that it searches for you and reports back anytime it finds a Scalextric Challenger for you to bid on.
It's just called a Challenger.
Scalextric Challenger, yep.
Thanks.
I never
Greg.
really got mine to work too well.
I honestly had to make sure the track was clean. I had to put on fresh tires so it had good traction, and I had to make sure that it had good magnets, because if it slips at all, it's not going to record useful information every time it slips. So it has to have perfect traction. It has to have, The guide has to not be sloppy, because if the guide's moving a little bit and it's not getting guide motion information, it's not going to have any useful information for that too.
All right, guys. We'll see you later on. I'm between students.
No worries, Scott. Have a good one.
Care.
I mean, I could talk all day about pace cars and recorded lap cars and digital and whatnot.
That's
That
sort of one
I
thing
know.
that's attracting me to digital is the fact that you could actually have like pace cars and things like that.
Yeah, and like I said, with the Arc Air and Arc Pro, you can do fixed speed pace cars, just have them go around at a set speed. And honestly, I've played with every kind of pace car that I've gone over, except for the Scalextric Pacer thing that the analog records your laps thing. I played with all of them, and none of them are going to give reasonable competition to somebody who's been racing for more than a year or two regularly. So what I recommend is that you don't worry about recorded lap cars. Just make sure that you're racing against a car that's way better than the car you're driving. So like a magnet car, like an LMP, that thing is just stuck down, never slides out. You take whatever car you're going to drive and drive it around and get your best lap time, 5 seconds, let's say. And then you run that LMP in the other lane with a target lap time of 4.9 seconds or 4.8 seconds or something like that. So you're going to catch up to it on the straights when it's not going full speed, but you're going to lose to it on the turns when it's stuck down because it's an LMP. It's going to just take the turns like nobody's business. And you're driving a no magnet car or whatever kind of car that just isn't as fast as those LMPs are. So you can just have that thing zipping around and around and around, and you're just trying to catch up and keep it from lapping you. That's a challenge. And you can do that on practically anything, rubber band on a controller, you can do that on.
Mm. And another thing, what pulls me to digital as well is the fact that you can change lanes and you can use proper pit stops and all that sort of thing as well.
Oh yeah, that's where my love is you get 6 guys on a 2-lane track and you're shifting lanes to make a pass and cutting them off, and not crashing is the best when you do that without crashing. Well, I'm gonna.
It's, as you know, the issue is out here in the Pacific Northwest is trying to get everyone to switch to digital. They're so, into analog, and they don't want to pay the money, and they don't want to switch, all over. So I love it, but if you want to race,
I would never try to convince somebody who races analog, especially if they've been doing it for a long time, that they should switch to digital, or that they should even add digital to their. If they're enjoying analog and they don't feel that anything's missing, I don't care. I'm not going to try to convince them otherwise. But if somebody's bored with analog, they're like, yeah, this is cool and all, but they want something more, then I'll talk their ear off about digital, because chances are that's what they want to do. Because like when we race on your track and you've got the fuel and everything, that's my kind of racing. I love it. And it's easy for me comparatively because I'm used to doing all that complicated race management stuff, fuel levels, tire levels, all that stuff on digital. But when it's just fuel to worry about, it's no problem. So
yeah.
That's a good way to kind of tease guys into the possibility of digital, is show them how much fun it is with just a simple fuel race, no lane changing or anything like that. And then it's like, well, we could add tire wear into the equation. We could add lane changing into the equation.
Yeah.
And then it's a whole nother thing. But that's why when the analog guys come over to my track and I have them race digital for IROC, I don't do any fuel or anything, because it's enough for them to have to worry about changing lanes to enjoy the race. And it's still a crash fest. They're focused on driving their car around the lap. They don't want to worry about whether somebody else is in their lane at the same time.
Yep.
Greg, not
Sort of
to
another
interrupt,
thing like
but-
that.
Oops.
Carry on.
Who wants to talk?
Well, I was going to say, we're about to get racing over here.
Okay.
Tonight we're running Fly Group 5 cars that we've upgraded a bit with motors and wheels and tires, etc. And then we're running Avant Slot. LMP, well, actually, I called the class Le Mans Classics because they were all cars that ran at Le Mans, like the Mirage, the Peugeot, that kind of thing. So we're gonna be starting racing shortly, just to let you know. Tonight we just have 4 guys. We haven't had a lot of people out because of the pandemic, but we get between 4 and 7 guys, and we have a good time. And it's Wednesday nights. We have some laughs. We have some fun.
I'd love to see a tour of the room if you have a chance.
Oh, sure. Let me switch cameras again.
Yeah, let's get a full tour. Give us all the details. Do not hold anything back.
Actually, most of that should be Dash's job because this is his house and he's over there setting up the computer and some waving. I don't know how well this is focusing, but that's the track. And as I said, it's Revell track. He's probably one of our older tracks that we have that we race on.
The oldest.
Yeah, Dash, you want to talk a little bit?
Yeah, we started back in '96 racing Scale X cars here on up in an attic of a farmhouse, and moved it from there to here probably 20 years ago. I've been running this track for 20 years in this basement.
How many feet is the lap on that track?
65 feet.
Pretty good. Can you show us that end over to your left?
It's my
Other left.
The other left.
You be here.
Yeah. I wanted to see where the bridge and everything was. So that's a turn or a bridge there?
Yeah.
Got it.
No, thank you.
You come around.
It's not that bad.
That's where you pop out.
Which direction does it go?
You got to have something hard. It's mostly straights.
Well, we go down the straightaway here.
So away from you or towards you?
Right to
Away
left.
from me.
Okay.
It goes both directions. There's reversing switches and everything on this.
Yeah, he's got all his driver stations well set up. You've got track buttons and everything.
Do you change directions often or rarely?
Rarely.
Yeah, that's what I figured.
Now, I know one of the things we were talking about one of the meetings ago, we talked about cleaning tires and things like that.
Yeah.
Oh, and cleaning the track and all that. One of the things that we do is we actually spray the track in one spot with Windex. So you got a little puddle you go through and it cleans the tires. Now, in a short race of 3 minutes, it usually lasts the whole race. But we've done some races where we run 10 minutes. So after about halfway there, the juice is gone. But by that point, you should be used to driving the laps so you can drive. Huh?
Yeah,
What kind of tires do you guys race on it?
Pardon me?
What kind of tires do you race on there? Silicone?
Yes.
Okay, that explains the Windex. I'm like, Windex?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah, we're either using the super tires or quick slicks. But, and then Dash has got a whole load of memorabilia and cars all over the place, as you can see over there.
Oh,
Got a cabinet over here.
I love the signs. The signs are great.
Oh, yeah. And then he's got stuff up above there. I don't know if you can see it with the light.
Yep.
But, and then he's got shelves in the background there and, pictures all over the place.
And the most important thing, a pouty couch.
With a powder on it.
With powder.
Now, Bill, who's sitting over there on the couch, he's actually involved in the design and building of an electric race car. Sports racer.
EVSR.
Did you hear that? EVSR?
Cool.
I designed the body for the current generation EVSR that we now have 2 complete cars on the track and a commitment for a 5-car production run so far.
Nice.
That must be a really big slot car track.
Go to our website, evsr.net.
Yeah, the rough part is combing out the braid.
You will see pictures of the cars on track. We've been running a car for 5 years.
Is that the lineup?
That should do it.
All right, well, we're about ready to race, so
Awesome.
I'll set the iPad back up so you can see the track and watch and enjoy.
Said you're running some Fly Group 5s. Are you running magnets or no magnets?
Well, we run no magnet mainly.
Awesome. Yeah, set it up. I want to see some racing.
I'm sorry, what was that, Greg?
Set it up. I want to see some racing.
Okay.
Yeah, I just looked at that EVSR website real quick. You need to make a slot car body for that thing. That is a gorgeous little car.
I'm gonna have to look that up. Anybody does anybody have that up ready to share it? Because I'm curious what that looks like. EVSR? Nope. Clicking the wrong thing.
EVSR.net.
EVSR.net. Gosh darn it. Oh, nice.
Chevron cars almost.
Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and share that. There we go. See that 821 there?
It looks like it had met something in the front there a little bit.
Yeah,
That one.
Oh,
has.
yes, it did.
yeah, that one's a little less than fully aerodynamic, but it looks like
I
a
like the
little
zip
car.
ties holding the nose on. That's pretty cool.
There you go.
And go ahead, Bill.
The first picture you showed there is the first generation car. The picture he's got up now is the first generation car with the new cars that I did the body design for alongside of it. The original car is a converted SCCA spec racer.
What original spec was that? Sorry.
A Renault powered spec racers. Remember
Oh, I
them?
remember those. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Oh, and this fellow talking is the guy that whose daughter does the bodies.
Right. Yeah. So do you race it in NASA as well?
NASA, our local SCCA regions all let us run them, and pretty much everybody likes it. It runs the same performance window as a spec racer Ford, but runs up to 45 minutes on charge. You'll see a lot of pictures of our earlier car, which was the really based entirely on a spec racer. And I was commissioned to design the new body, and that's what you got.
So it's a chrome moly frame then, right?
I think it's mild steel.
Mild steel, really?
Sure. All your old English formula cars are all mild steel.
They were.
Chrome moly is a high zoot American thing.
Yeah, that's why a lot of formula cars are chrome moly.
Swifts are, and new American ones are, but that's
yeah.
it.
Van Diemen's, even old Reynolds actually from the 80s are chrome moly.
Okay, there you go. There's the new body shell. That's the first one out of the mold. That's the first one out of the mold.
It's pretty fun.
Are you generating any downforce with that lip at the back, or?
Maybe a little bit, but we're really not trying to.
Okay.
We're not going fast enough to need it, and for range and speed considerations, it's a better idea not to bother.
BMG.
Yeah, no, that I can see that. Yeah.
You know, we got 120 mile an hour practical speed in the racing form.
Yeah, that's fast enough to do some damage if you know.
Yeah, and there's no need for what we're trying to do with, essentially spec racers.
there's no need to make it faster. You can race at any speed. We're about to race slot cars.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely, you're absolutely right. I mean, yeah, go-karts are exactly right.
Yeah, so there's not the need. And they're champing at the bit here for me to go race. So
Well, I was gonna, that's my next, okay, go ahead, sir. I was gonna ask if you've driven these cars yet?
I unfortunately have not yet driven it myself. I have a lot of laps in the old Renault powered spec racers, raced them for many years, but I have not had a chance to race the electric or even drive the electric. I don't race anymore except slot cars.
Okay, so I guess you're just using like racing tires as well. You haven't got like really hard or high pressure tires or anything.
No, we're using I don't know what they're on now, but I think it's a Goodyear Slick. I'm not really sure. We're using race tires though.
Holy
And
cow.
you're getting Lime Rock video there.
Yeah, I was gonna say, yeah, yeah, Lime Rock, that's a big boy track.
How many motors does the car have?
Just one.
Just one, right?
Just one motor in the back, rear wheel drive, and we use very little regen. And we, most importantly, do not use lithium ion batteries. And that's because the track operators don't want us to use them. They're afraid of burning a hole in their track if we have an incident.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's a really, really good idea.
Yeah, no, we're using lithium ferrous phosphates and they're pretty fireproof.
Yeah,
And
well, geez, that looks like a lot of fun. Now I have to ask though, is it an inline or a sidewinder?
it's in line.
There you go.
A legitimate question. I drive a Sidewinder on the street. So.
Does it have a fly spring?
Anyway, I'm gonna race. Enjoy.
Okay, that looks like a, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Super cool.
Eric, I'll leave it to you to mute. They may not want.
It looks like he had a 110 scale there. He's about halfway to a 124 scale slot car then.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's really cool.
That is very cool.
All right. Well, I still got bunches of topics that Brian suggested that'll get us talking. Does anybody else have anything they want to throw out there or share or ask?
One thing I was actually going to mention before, like what's got me interested in the ARC system recently, and that is the fact that it's got like the simulated fuel usage, tire wear, weather conditions, and all that.
Yeah, I mean that's they kind of learned from what the hobbyists had done with the previous Powerbase race control system. 64 is the software that we're using for the APB as it was known, and it, because of the way the APB allowed the computer to basically control everything. The Powerbase became nothing but a conduit for control data to go to the computer, and then the computer then sent control data back to the Powerbase that then went out to the cars. So the computer had full power over every bit of control data that goes to the cars, which means they can make it slow down, when it's got a problem, or they can make it speed up when you want to use boost or, fuel load simulation so that it's, slower with a full tank and faster with an empty tank. And weather conditions actually caused your car performance to change. If you had wet tire or you had hards on a wet track, your acceleration was delayed and your braking was delayed, so that you actually felt like you did not have proper traction when you were driving your car. All that kind of stuff was possible because of the way that the Powerbase handed over all control to the computer. The ARC Pro does not do that. The ARC Pro basically sends lap information and some throttle information, but not in real time, whereas the APB was straight up real time, full real time control. The ARC Pro is basically, getting data, and it can do some things, but not as much as the old Powerbase with a computer could do. So when you're seeing fuel usage and tire wear, it's more based on your lap speed than anything else. So if you do obviously you're using less throttle. If you do a slower lap, you're generally using less throttle, so you burn less fuel. But if you do the same speed of a lap at a constant throttle versus going faster and slower, you'll burn the same amount of fuel, and it's just like a chunk of your fuel. It's not like 99 ticks of percentage of fuel. It's like 20% ticks or whatever it is. So it's very high, low grain, low resolution, I guess you could say, as far as what it does. The Magic app has a little bit better. That's why you definitely want to play with that, because he's basically pushing all of the boundaries. He's trying to get absolutely as much as possible out of that control system as he can. And there's just some limitations. There's some things he can't do. But
Yeah, I'll
there's
certainly
not-
have a look at it to see if it's accessible or how accessible it is.
Well, hopefully it's as or more accessible than the Scalextric one, because it's definitely a better app. And what I would say is, if you find that there's something in there lacking because of whatever, absolutely tell the developer. Go on Slot Forum, he's on there, he's on other forums, and I think he's got an email address and stuff. Absolutely tell him, hey, I use a screen reader so that I can use this app, but it's missing this bit, or it's not giving me the information I need. And I can almost guarantee the guy will look into what needs to be done to make that more accessible. It's freeware, but donations definitely help. So if you find it useful, see what you can donate to his donationware. All right, thanks for joining us, Russ. See you again next time. And yeah, so you want me to dig into my topic list? All right, I'm gonna dig in.
Take it easy, guys. I'll see you later.
See you, Russ. So I'm just gonna dig from the top, because these are all are interesting in their own way. So number one, most neglected part of a car maintenance, or what most folks do wrong. Anybody want to give a crack at that?
My first vote for most neglected is the way most folks treat their braid.
Like, not at all.
Well, or actually, I've seen guys doing negative stuff to braids. That would be my most. And then what was part two, Greg?
What you do wrong.
Too much oil.
Same thing, right?
Too much oil.
I've got a long list for that one. And I don't know where to start.
So when you think to yourself the bad things people do with braid, I want to hear some examples.
Well, I mean, whenever, when you see guys' cars online, or, for various proxies, all the cars are sort of unraveled and unwrapped and show and tell before the first race. And I tell you, like, I know where the guys are going to end up just by looking at the cars for 2 seconds. The braids are all twisted and ratty and worn out, and guys bend them in all kinds of weird shapes and smush them. And your braid should basically be, nice and straight, nice and flat, with a slight curve in it, and nice and clean. And it's the cheapest bloody part of slot car maintenance. So, change the bloody things and clean them with a toothbrush and look after them, because if the power can't get to the car, not much really else matters.
Now, Chris, to that point, I've seen some people take, the braids and actually comb them so they're straight. Is that something that anyone should do, or should you just leave it woven? Or
you don't need to do that by any stretch of the imagination. Most of the braid now is the the current braid that we use, which is thin braid. It's all highly conductive. You really don't need to mess around with it. It's thin. Some of the older braid from days gone by was it wasn't that it didn't conduct, it was so bloody stiff that if you combed the braid out and made individual strands, it just became less springy, which let the guide sit a little more consistently and lower into the slot. But you know, you see guys take the braid and then they'll take a 1-inch piece and try and make it a 3/4 inch piece, and it all opens up sort of like a one of those hinged fence thing, like it, right? When you increase the hole sizes, you make those holes can better grab dirt and pieces of crap that are floating around the track, so it picks it up more. And then you put, you know, cleaner on it, and most of it's oil based, and now you pick up more stuff than you start, and you just disappear down a hole. So put the braids on, fold them over once, keep them flat, keep them smooth, keep them clean with a toothbrush and some isopropyl alcohol or lighter fluid, and keep the oil and the gunk off of them, and you'll be a happy camper.
I can't disagree with any of that per se. However,
come on.
However, it depends on the track that you're racing on. Everything you said is absolutely true across the board for the most part. Yes. Putting a car with exceptionally flat and straight braids onto a Scalextric sport track is not going to get as good a performance if you give those braids just the tiniest little twist so that they ride the inside edge of the slot, because the slot is rail. Whereas on other track like Carrera or pretty much any other track, literally other than Scalextric, you know, straight and wide is good because that's where the rail is. And I remember early on, you know, in the analog club, the guys would do like you were talking about, push the braid towards itself so that it opens up and fans out, and then like, you know, kind of pull out the ends so that there's more little frayed edges, and bend it so that it's pushing down on the track and stuff like that. And then you do that with a slotted car with the super stiff nickel plated braid that they used to have. And the front end would just ride like that. It would go bing, 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 bing down the track because it was so springy. And then if you flatten it too much, they're not touching the rail at all. So it's like, you know, you got to find that happy medium. But then when I discovered the little twist trick, not enough that it pushes it up, right? Just enough so that the braid kind of wants to ride that slot. When guys would have trouble with their car, I'd say, do you want me to check your braids, right? I'd say, well, this isn't how I would do it. Do you want me to do it how I would do it? And they'd like, yeah, what the hell? Just do whatever you think is best. So I'd give it that little twist, and I would warn them, your car is going to drive different now, usually more power and better braking. And 99 times out of 100, their car would have more power and better braking, because on a Scalextric sport track, that little twist is gold. I don't know.
It sounds like you created a modern gimbal.
Probably. It's probably using the same physics of it.
Yeah, and I mean, on Scalextric sport track, you can create a gimbal because the walls of the slot are actually rails.
Exactly. And I would never suggest that trick on any other track.
Right.
Any other track.
Yeah.
Chris, so would you, I take it you're not an Inox fan on braids then?
Yeah.
Or braid juice of any kind.
If you keep your track clean and the braids clean and adjusted, I mean, Inox is lanolin. It's oil. It attracts dust. So the more you use it, the more you use it. And it tracks across the braid. It tracks across rails. So therefore it goes on the track. Oil attracts and hold dust. So as you track it around the track, it does hold and attract dust. And, you know, clean is the best way. You know, having said that, I run on a lot of spray glue slot car tracks and put slime all over my braid and crap everywhere. So, you know, sort of, you know, I sort of come at this from both ends, but from club racing, if you keep everything nice and clean, you're going to be just fine.
If you're running on a spray glue track, then yes, you need to do that. But the stuff to use if you're doing that is what you can get it at most auto supply stores. It's called Marvel Mystery Oil. MARVEL, Marvel Mystery Oil. And it's basically a light oil, almost like an automatic transmission fluid, but it has some kind of detergent in it because it smells a little bit like that drain cleaner that we used to have. And that, if you soak a little bit of that into your braid while you're running on a commercial track, you'll find the braid stays absolutely clean and shiny. In fact, it gets cleaner the more that you use it, and it's not that expensive.
Inox works really good for.
Maybe a place for, and Greg could probably talk to this a little bit better, Brian, but certainly for, I exclusively race analog. I do not race digital. So digital has some inherent issues with sparks and electric shocks and stuff like that the Inox may tend to smooth out a little bit from a computer base. I'm talking purely from how the slot car goes, keep it clean. From a digital perspective, where you've got computers and all the other sensitive electronic issues, maybe an Inox may be a bonus.
Yeah, the Inox really found its place in the world of digital slot cars because most of the sets, Scalextric and Carrera and SCX and Inco, all the control information goes through the rails, and it's a computer inside the car. And so if it's not getting consistent and reliable data transmission, then it's not going to have a consistent and reliable performance. And so clean was the thing at first. Before you could even consider racing, you'd spend half an hour, not scrubbing, but basically, using whatever solvents or whatever to get any oxidation or whatever there might be on the rails off, and cleaning your braids nice and wonderfully. And then, it would work better. But then, people would be trying, electrical, spray contact cleaner. And, then, I had some stuff that worked really well, but then, it was really old and it had chemicals in there that weren't allowed anymore. So the new stuff didn't work as good. And I don't remember why. I think, Billy Cart, I think he was on here once or twice in Australia, went to a hobby store and was describing this problem to somebody, and they said, "Here, try Inox and see how it works." And then it worked fantastically, and it just does work fantastically, and it does help analog a little bit, but analog doesn't have that problem really that digital does, that it needs that crisp, clean communication. I think the biggest mistake for people who use Inox for the first time, and this goes to what you mentioned about it getting all over the place, is that they use too much. Because if it's a good thing, how could it be bad if you use more of it, right? But with Inox, the less, the better. And if you go through the trouble of spreading it, with some kind of applicator all over your rails, then if you don't turn right around and use something to sop it up with so that you don't have any standing droplets anywhere, you're basically taking it off again, so that the only thing that's on the rail is whatever minuscule film is left behind that is more or less chemically stuck to the rail. Then it doesn't get everywhere. It doesn't track on the tires noticeably. It doesn't collect in the braids noticeably. But yeah, if you put drops into your braids and then run your car around, your braids are going to get mucked up. Remarkably, it still tends to work just fine, even with mucky braids. So I don't even clean my track anymore. If I ever need to do anything rail related, it's put another drop on a car that's not running well, and then just go.
Greg, that's kind of what I do. And with me, where I find it works on the braids and cars maybe I haven't run in a while, Now, I do keep a toothbrush there, and I never thought about trying the isopropyl. I will give that a try, as Chris suggested. So normally what I do is I get,
or not acetone, but lighter fluid is what I meant.
yeah,
Lighter fluid's better.
That's it, yeah, that's a great way
Yeah,
to clean
yeah,
the braid. Yeah, with a toothbrush or a really soft steel brush, but don't put a lot of pressure on it. Toothbrush is definitely the way to go. And then if
But
it
I
doesn't
find-
work after you clean it, then a drop. But then just put a drop on each braid and then wipe it off with a paper towel from the braid, so you don't have liquid inox in the braids.
I've just been putting a drop on each and letting it go, and it helps. But I can see Chris's point where it's just going to continue to gunk that up. So I'm going to give the isopropyl a try. Thanks for that tip, Chris.
Yeah, it doesn't evaporate. So if you do that enough, it would not be a bad idea to run a paper towel around your rails just once, just to get up anything that's still sitting there.
Funny thing is, I actually got the tip about the inox and that listening to the first episode of this. I went down to my local hardware store and got a can of the stuff and that, because my rails were just as rough as hell. So I just spray a little bit on a sponge, wipe over the rails, and I just wipe it off with another cloth. And they've just come up fantastic.
And that's mainly because of whatever residual oxidation was on the rails. You're still running analog, right? So it's not a digital thing. It was just oxidation. And people have been kind of managing that oxidation with WD-40 and other, antioxidant, treatments for a long time. There was quite a discussion on Slot Forum a few years ago where a guy with a like catalog photograph ready classic Scalextric track with all the fancy tracks, the humpback and the crisscrosses and the squeezes and all the buildings and everything. It looked like something straight out of the Scalextric catalog. Swore up and down that the only thing that you should ever do is spray some WD-40 on a rag and run it around and then store it. And then when you want to play with it 6 months later, you take the stuff off and you do WD-40 on the rails again, and then everything is good. And I'm like, well, do that once with inox and you never have to do it again. WD-40 does kind of dry sort of and get gunky, and the inox doesn't. All right. Anybody else want to throw something out there for their mistakes that newbies make? Or
Yeah, the other thing is over lubrication, of course.
yeah, on axles and
I see a lot of cars coming into Electric Dreams from customers. Yeah, please, can you have a look at this? It doesn't work anymore. And it's one of the things is everything is covered in oil inside. That's the first thing. The second thing is that half of the guy's carpet is wrapped around the axle, right? You can always tell whether a guy is a carpet racer or not, or whether he has a cat or a dog, right? By how much stuff is wrapped around the axles. So yeah, people over oil these things. They over grease them. There's almost no need to do that more than a drop of oil at the beginning of a car's life, and you probably don't need to do anything for 2 races, maybe 3. I don't know. It depends how often you use it. But that's generally one thing that I see. Way too much oil.
Yeah.
I was just going to say that, it's always good never to let your spouse know that a package is going to arrive.
or coordinate it with her most recent shoe or purse purchase or whatever, right?
Yeah, it's like, oh, look what happened. I don't know.
You got a new purse? I got a new car. Cool, huh?
One of the other things that I was in the shop today and I had a few cars in to sort out. And another thing that happens frequently is people thinking that the little set screws in our modern cars, you need a 80-pound torque wrench to tighten them up. And I see so many stripped wheels and stripped gears, and if you're using a set screw wrench, you can put more pressure with just your thumb and forefinger to tighten up a set screw. You don't need to get the electric drill out and just reef on the things.
Well, I think we've got a trend here where, you know, less is more, which is sort of opposite to the way we behaved in, you know, when we were younger with alcohol.
Well, it's interesting that a few of the thinking back to school, a few of the engineering seminars and stuff that I was sitting there trying to keep awake in at that point in time, there's quite a bank of evidence that if you over tighten a set screw, it actually has less purchase on an axle than a moderate, because it tends to distort the frames. And I won't go on, but there's a bunch of engineering excellence and engineering principles behind that to suggest that tight enough is tight enough. And if you just reef something, actually you can create a situation where the wheel can actually come off the axle easier than if it's moderately tight.
Hey, now there's an invention. How about a tiny torque wrench?
Already got them.
Yeah.
Slotted makes little torque wrenches.
Slotted makes one, Scale Auto have one.
Sorry,
NSR
gents, that's
might
me.
have
Here's
one.
the band. Here's me, and right behind the band. Sorry.
You missed your niche there, John. Sorry.
Yeah.
And they're adjustable too. The only thing that you can't do really with them is actually decide on a particular value of the torque that you're applying. Basically, it's a torque limiting device. It just has a little ratchet and a spring with a screw in it, right? So that you turn it, and when you get to the particular torque, it just clicks. But what that particular torque is, you would have to actually set up something to measure it. But yeah, they're available. The
Yeah, I
slotted
have one
ones
of
are
the
really
slotted-
simple.
I have one of the slotted ones, and I definitely got one of those early on. It was like, get a regular one or get the one with the torque clicky thing for just a few dollars. And I'm like, well, I don't want to over torque my set screws, so I'll get the fancy torque clicky thing. I've never adjusted it. It's whatever the stock torque was since I got it. So yeah, it'd be cool if there was like a known torque value that you want to reach. I'm sure somebody's figured out something.
Well, if you go and look at the technical specs of a 2mm set screw, you'll probably find somewhere in that there will be a suggested tightening torque, right? But I mean, those 2mm set screws that we have in the wheels and gears of most of the 1/32 scale cars, the biggest issue there is stripping out the socket. It's not actually breaking the threads, right? Because the fit of the Allen wrench, the Allen tip into that hexagonal socket is very important, and you know, a lot of the screws are not necessarily always as good as they should be. You know, Scale Auto for a while had really bad fitting screws. The slotted ones are better. Anything bigger than that is a better idea.
Well, I normally, as a rule of thumb now, every wheel or every gear that I have that's an M2, I take them out and I retap with the 256, and I've got some good 256 set screws and put them in and miles in.
Yeah, or tap them with an M2.5, and then you can use the same 0.050 inch hex that you use on a 440.
Yeah.
That's what Ernie's done on the new MR slot cars. They're all 2.5mm now.
Yeah, I remember stripping some of those hex, you know, with the wrench, and Alan gave me a talking to. He was very disappointed in the quality of various things. I think his main complaint actually was that in order to basically get around the inconsistency of some of the set screws, Slotted made their hex wrench slightly undersized. And so you're more likely to strip those screws out with the slotted wrench if it's if it's to spec. If the screw is to spec but the wrench is not, you're going to strip that screw. So he's convinced me to get a Scale Auto driver.
He's
just
a good
because it fits
salesman,
better.
is Alan. Yeah.
Yeah. He's a good salesman.
I guess that would be a subject for quite a lot of discussion too. Which would be tools in general. We could do that sometime, Greg.
Any of you guys are using like the little slotted wrenches that come taped to the bottom of the box, like the little L-shaped ones? Not a bad idea. Every once in a while, just get your Dremel out and cut 1/8 of an inch off. That'll eliminate, 'cause these things are not particularly hardened well, and the Allen keys do tend to lose their hex shape and go a little more round. So, just examine it every once in a while, take your Dremel out, slice 1/8 of an inch off, and away you go.
Yeah, most people who get a slotted or their first tuner car, they pick up a slotted, and they're like, how do I even make adjustments? That tool is the only one they've got, is the one that was taped under the box.
Yep. Yeah, I think tools would be a good you could stretch that in a couple of hours actually with all the.
Okay, what tool should we talk about now?
Well, they're actually kind of touching on that on one of these next topics.
Yeah, I mean, we've got 20 minutes left. Do we have any more of newbie mistakes / neglected maintenance things that anybody wants to say, talk?
The list is huge.
Yeah, but the list is huge. The list gets bigger the more competitive you become, I think.
Yeah.
Of course.
And so for the regular home racer, that's we don't need to talk about controller maintenance much. For competitive guys, that's a big deal.
So for your general watcher of these videos and home racer, probably less is more of pretty much everything. Oil, tightening of screws, whatever you're doing.
Keep the braids clean.
Keep the braids clean. Yeah. Don't put too much oil on your axles and bushings, and especially not the motor. Keep the hair out. If you're rug racing, take your car,
keep the hair out.
Car every once in a while and pull the hair off your axles and your motor and things. And
Good advice.
All right, well, let's go ahead and crack that next topic open, and we'll see if we can fill the last 20 minutes. What is the first thing someone new to the hobby should learn, other than obviously what we've just talked about? All those things, plus
9:42 a.m.
It's 2 a.m. Anybody have anything that they think a newbie should learn?
Well,
the first thing?
Well, I'm just going to go back to the package thing. I don't want to repeat myself.
I think probably the basic thing is learn how to drive the car first. Like spend a bit of time learning how it goes around and the brakes work and
throttle control.
Yeah.
Don't expect to win first night out.
Don't expect to win first night out, and don't expect the car to stay on when you're just holding the trigger at full blast the whole time. That's not what the game is.
Winning first time out is not a bad point for me. I win every time out after 2-1 racing.
And you also come last every time then, right?
Yeah.
I have a perfect record.
Yeah.
I'm undefeated.
One thing what I've always done, even when it comes to like video games and all that sort of stuff, and that I wouldn't go full throttle right from the start. I'd just take it easy and then speed up from that point to the point that it's sort of like maybe that's a little bit too fast for the corner, slow down a bit, and you just got to learn that way. So if you start slow and then get faster.
Yeah, I know that's a general rule for racing as it is. It's not how fast you go into a corner, it's how fast you come out.
Well, I tell the guys at the commercial track, don't race the other lanes. Forget the other guys. And especially on some of the bigger commercial tracks, if you're on red or black lane, which is generally the inside or the outside lane, you're so far off the pace from the inside lanes just because of the shape of the track. you know, if Dennis is on green or orange and I'm on purple or blue, one of the inside lane, and if I'm trying to race him, he's on an inside lane, forget it. So, you know, just, you know, race yourself, progress, don't worry about winning the first race. And if some guy comes whizzing by you, don't think, okay, I better just squeeze the track. You know, just, you know, don't race the other guys.
One of the things that Alan has been known to say quite often is it's a lot easier to teach a consistent driver how to go faster than it is to teach a fast driver how to race consistently.
Yeah.
So you're better off just staying on the track, and eventually you're going to go faster.
Pardon my interruption, but we're going to sign out for the evening. So I hope you enjoyed our little show.
Thank you.
Yes, thank
You're
you.
welcome. See you next week.
And Greg,
Yeah,
and Greg, for me, I'm like the beginner of all beginners compared to everybody else. For me, I tell people, when you first get your set, don't be afraid to open up your car. Open up the car, take it apart and look at it and look at the inside, see what's there, see all the components and how they work with each other, then put it back together, then drive the car and see how the car drives. Because you can just take a car out of the box and drive it and don't have a clue. I mean, if you're a beginner, you don't know what all the components are for the car. Like most people are slot car veterans, so that, you know, they know that doesn't register to them. But someone who's a beginner, they needed to open up the car and look and see what's under the hood.
I think they need to do that with some supervision, though. There's some guys who I know who could open up a car and it would never get back together. So,
Well, although Kelly, regardless of how many years, everyone loses a screw or two.
Oh,
I mean, Chris has had a screw loose for a long time.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I've been accused of that.
Actually, it's actually a grub screw, a hex grub screw.
The grub screw is something you get after lunch. You've got to be careful now.
I am not going to touch that. I'm sorry. That was like set spike. I'm sorry. Let it fall on the net.
Yeah, he's not going to touch that one either.
No, yeah. Okay.
The one thing that I learned when I got back into it was how much more enjoyable it made running the cars for me to have the variable voltage power supply, because with the different makes of cars and different motors, being able to adjust your power to make the cars controllable.
That's a really good point. A really good point.
Yeah, I think adjustable power supply and a good quality controller changes the hobby. Unfortunately, you know, when guys come into the store and they're buying a set for, you know, $200, $300, $400 or whatever it is, it's sometimes a bit of a sell to say, okay, you need to spend another $150 on a power supply and another $150, you know, you got to spend the same again on a controller. I mean, it's for the enthusiast or someone who is planning on, you know, being in the hobby for a while. I think those two elements are essential, but it's sometimes a tough sell for like a complete, I know we'll sell lots of sets this Christmas for people, and I can guarantee you 95% of them, I will not be selling additional power supplies and or controllers with them. You know, a month after Christmas, maybe, but not.
But Jim and Chris, that goes back to our earlier point about less is more. You're absolutely right. You can have more fun at a lower voltage. It's not about the speed. It's just like having fun.
Yeah, the adjustable, an adjustable power supply and a good quality controller are godsends to this hobby. They're hugely important in enjoying a set. But it is an extra cost, and you have to decide whether or not it's like a Christmas morning, drive it around the Christmas tree thing, or is it going to be something that you want to, you know, grow into over a period of time. So.
Well, then again, that's how we sort of all started, right? It was a Christmas tree thing that evolved into what size grub screw are you using?
Basically.
Jim was talking about Christmas of 1963. I think that's
Yes.
exactly when I started as well.
What kind of set?
Oh, I had a VIP set that was the British set with the steel track, and yeah, never really stopped. Well, I did for some years into when I got into radio control, but I got back. I came back.
Another thing I would mention to learn is find a forum and frequent the forum. I have learned so much from the forums. That's where I learned about adjustable power supplies. And once I thought I'd burned out my power supply and I posted something and got an answer and fixed it easily. And I've learned so much and enjoyed so much from folks like you on the forums.
Yeah, well, again, just like what we're doing right now, and sharing is it's just so much. First, it's fun, but yeah, you learn so much.
And yeah, there's no excuse anymore almost for anybody these days not to go looking for that stuff. It's just, I think people, and I think we talked about this a couple of sessions back as well, that people just don't realize how much information is available out there, right? People think that the hobby's died. It hasn't. The hobby is probably better off now than it ever was in its entire existence. And yep, that's the way. Get on the internet, find out things. You know, look, read. That's what we did. That's what we do.
Keep it coming. I'm eating dinner. You guys just.
Oh, is that why we could see yours? We saw the pretty version of Greg for a while there, instead of the Hobbit version or the whatever the bearded version.
I resemble that remark.
I just recently got a variable power supply, you know, on the new controllers we talked about a couple of months ago and the variable power supply. So I set up a little track the other day and I had different cars from slotted to basic SCX and I got to play with the voltage, right? You know, between 7 and 14. And it was quite a difference. I look forward to using that some more, you know, especially with the different cars. It was interesting, you know.
Well, yeah, and to your point, Graham, if you want to sort of try and emulate a particular era of racing, if you're doing sports cars from the 50s and 60s, you don't want a lot of power. So,
yeah, like you showed with your MGA on one of those spots you did, right? Yeah, you don't want a lot of power. You just want the car to maybe slip a bit in the corner, you know, and that's what an MGA would do. So, you know, yeah, no, I enjoyed that. I just got to try that the other day, but it was, it really made quite a difference.
I was playing with a Ninco Jag E-Type on my track over the weekend. And at the 11 volts that I normally run for all my slotted stuff and so on, it wasn't really much fun, but turn it down to like 9.5 and it was grand. It was such a wonderful little car to drive around, you know, because it looks pretty and it you know, it's fun to see it working, but not at 11 or 12. Yeah. And we found after one proxy that was here, because we always ran at 12 volts, right? I used to have this thing that it was an immutable law of nature and physics that all slot cars run on 12 volts, right? But eventually we had one proxy where the organizers required 10 volts and we ran on 10 volts. And afterwards I thought, you know, I wonder how our cars, the regular stuff we run, the slotteds and NSRs and so on, would run on 10 volts. And we ran the same lap times and better total laps on the 10 volts than we ever did at 12. And we had a lot less offs and everybody had a lot more fun. So we don't go back there anymore. And
well, I know Greg's eating, but I think the theme of this whole chat has been less is more.
Yeah, absolutely. And even voltage, you know.
I wish I had known that in high school.
There's a lot of things we wish we'd known in high school.
A variable power supply is a necessity if you are going to let your grandchildren drive your cars.
Yeah, sure. But if you don't have a variable power supply, there are other ways to do it, right? You know, you can always have like a rotary switch with a bunch of diodes on it or something like that you can switch it down.
Or you limit the trigger action on your controller in some way, shape, or form, right?
So I think that's one thing what the ARC has as well, is that when you go into like your driver management, you've got the option of actually like toning down the amount of power that goes to it, I believe.
Oh,
Yeah, it only works for Arc Air and Arc Pro. It doesn't work for Arc One because Arc One doesn't have any control over throttle at all. But Arc Air and Pro, because they're wireless throttles, it has control over throttle level. So it's not changing the voltage to the track, it's telling the car to go slower. Well, actually, no, Arc Air, because it's analog, is sending lower voltage to the cars and allowing you to use the full trigger of your controller and just not sending top voltage to the cars. It's a pretty good system. 5 minutes left. Anything else?
I was wanted to ask, did anybody ever run into Lionel road racing slot cars? That's what I started with when I was, I guess, 8 or 9 years old, 1960, 61.
I have a little experience with that because my dad, when he retired, was working for Lionel. It would have been a little later time frame than yours, because theirs was actually, you could change lanes. And the way it worked is you let off the throttle, and I guess when the car decelerated, the front wheels would turn, and then you'd jump back on the throttle again. But that was more of an HO scale.
Yeah, no, I was 1/32. That's what Lionel in 1960 or 61, 1/32 scale, and the rails and the pickup looked just like HO scale. You know, they had the brass, or copper or brass braids, not braid, they're actually metal.
Call them shoes.
Yeah, and they had the vertical rails just like HO, but it was 1/32 scale. And then I ended up with, I think, 2 or 3 of those sets by the time I was, 8 or 10. And that's what I use. But boy, I don't see it much. Even looking on the interweb, you see the odd car for sale or maybe a set or something. But I was really impressed when one kid up the street, in probably 63, he moved in and he had a Lionel set. And he brought it from Rhodesia, which was funny. And he just come from Rhodesia and he had a Lionel set. So we used to lay plywood out in the backyard on the good days. And we had 4 or 5 sets to put together. But, back in those days, it was, of course, Eldon and Scale Electric and Strombecker, right? Were the big ones. But Lionel, I don't see too much of that. But boy, I put hours into that stuff, Yeah. Huh. But I've never run into anybody else that's had it,
Know about that in South Africa, that's for sure.
I had Lionel trains.
Oh yeah, Lionel trains maybe.
Yeah.
Not the slot cars.
Well, I think sounds like that's coming to an end. So we'll go ahead and stop the recording here. You guys keep chatting about whatever. But I'm going to hit the stop button. So if you want to wave goodbye, wave goodbye. Bye.